welcome to our first seminar on financial literacy. This one is level 1, and it's going to cover some of the basic cornerstones or steps to financial literacy. So let's start off with number 1. And number 1 is create savings. What does that mean to you?
Open a savings account.
Open a savings account.
Put part of the money I get in a savings.
Put part of the money you get in a savings account. How do you know how much?
What you have available, which is not a good answer.
Budget.
Okay, right. We need to start doing some financial reports, basically, to cover those two answers, which were very good, but again, this vague just put money in the bank is not going to work, right? So what we do need to do is develop a budget. But there's a step before that.
We need to make money.
That's true. We definitely need to make money. But what's the step before a budget that we need to measure?
Gather all your bills, know what you have to put out every month.
Exactly. So what we need to do is look at our cash flow first, right? So we have to do the cash flow. All right, so that is what we have coming in and what we have going out, right? So what are some of the things that are categories of the in category? The in list.
Salary.
Salary.
Gifts from rich uncles.
Oh, yeah.
Financial aid.
Financial aid.
Child support.
All right.
It should be pretty consistent. Like, I mean, sometimes you get like sporadic amounts, like a
Right,
tax refund
right.
or that, but it should be something that's pretty consistent.
Exactly,
Okay.
right, because we're going to be developing that budget.
Okay.
All right, so if you had a tax refund every year, then you could budget that in for May, something like that, depending on the status of the government. But most of us don't have one every year. So, and actually, that's part of poor planning. If you have a refund, you have not planned well. So you don't use the government as a savings bank. So that's not the idea there. But yeah, these are some very good, and this one could be sporadic, and Peter may have a nice uncle, that helps support him. So we have the in type of income. Now, what are some of the examples of our regular outflow?
Housing, rent or mortgage.
Right, so rent
Car.
or mortgage, car,
Utilities, food.
Telephone.
all right,
Gas.
yeah, so
Insurance.
plus gas, insurance, child care,
Medical expenses.
yeah, definitely. And this one hopefully is not a regular one. So this one may be hopefully a sporadic one. Okay, but when we do a budget, if we do want to account for it, just in case, right? Okay, so we have some pretty standard examples of the money coming in and the money going out, right? So ideally, we would want, at the bottom here, if we did a total, and I'm going to put the total over here. Okay, so let's say, for instance, income is $1,000 a month, and outflow is $500 a month. What kind of shape are we in?
Good shape.
Good shape, right. But for most of us, outflow isn't that good of a shape, right? We might be at 1,500, right? So we've got a problem. So what's happened to your savings plan at that point? It's gone, right. In fact, you may be dipping into the savings you had, exactly, at that point. So what you've got to do is get a picture of your cash flow. So how do you accomplish this? You name the categories, all right, so how do you accomplish this?
I would create a spreadsheet.
Okay, all right. So you could do it on the computer or on a piece of paper. You don't have to be computer literate to do any of these steps that we're going to go through.
But you need to write it down.
Yes, right. And this is a very good thing to do with the family, especially with young children. They may not understand all these categories. You may not want to share that information, all right, because they might share it again. Right? So you might have to keep this at a higher level, but definitely talk to them about the expenses, and on this side about whether you're in good shape or bad shape. All right? But again, with young children, being very careful on sharing this part. So the next step, so we develop our cash flow, and we write it all down. And one of the things to do is, let's say, if you have never done it before, is during the month, at minimally a week, is keep all your receipts, keep something in your pocket, start recording things. And one of the key things to record is what we'll call the miscellaneous category. All right, that would be the cup of coffee. Let's put lunch there when you're out. Movies, right? So we might put the entertainment here. Entertainment. And then I'm going to put the just plain old extras here. Right. Yes, right. Pepsi, any of our caffeine fixes, we need to list over here. So what we're going to do then, once we have a general idea of the categories that we spend our money, what we need to do then is take it to the next step, which is what was mentioned earlier, is create a budget. So what does a budget look like?
Shows cash flows in and out.
Okay, we've done that on our cash flow. So now how are we going to flip this to a budget format? What would be the columns and rows in a budget? In other words, if this is the column and rows in a cash flow, what's the columns and rows in a budget?
You're going to have your month.
Okay, a month down the bottom side or across the top? Yeah, most folks, you can do it either way. Right. Yes. And so you'll do your month. So you're going to do January, February, March, and so on. Okay, so what goes down the side?
What you owe, the things you have to pay.
Okay, our expenses. So we're going to start categorizing these. And there's some major groupings that you can put these in, or you can just list them as you have here. So we'll start, our first major category is the in, all right? So that's in. And so we have salary, financial aid, child support. I'm going to put the gifts under other. And then you start with the outflow. And so you would have your major categories. So under utilities, this got you started, but what else goes under utilities? Power. So we got telephone, power, water and sewer, internet. So in other words, this is a major subcategory in the expenses, the outflow, and then under that you list all these together. So I'm kind of a little, I like these all collapsible, and if you use QuickBooks, Quicken, it'll collapse these categories and expand them for you. QuickBooks does too, but that's for businesses.
What about credit cards?
Okay, where do credit cards go?
Oh,
Yeah, right. They're in the out category. Okay, so definitely you want the credit cards in these categories, exactly. So then you take this information. Now some of this is basically fixed. Some of it is variable. So what are some of the categories on the expenses, that are fixed? Rent, mortgage, the car payment, the insurance, at least for 6 months. It might be. As the family grows, that does become, but you can pretty much guess that if you've got a history there. You can pretty much guess. I do an allocation for the food, for the groceries. These are pretty stable, some variation on like the water, sewer, the power, but the telephone's pretty stable, the internet's stable, unless you are being charged for each message or something like that. So you've got some that are fixed and some, so you can plan those out. So for instance, obviously the salary, you're going to have a fixed amount. financial aid, but financial aid may have ups and downs. So you leave gaps, let's say, in the summer months. Child support, and then gifts. Let's say the gift occurs only in February, but you can plug it in. So that type of thing. That would be that tax refund. That year you have a refund, go back and revisit your budget and plug that refund in and when you expect to get it. And then if you do it in a spreadsheet on the computer, everything will adjust for you automatically. And that's the nice thing about saying, oh, right, I've got some extra cash. So what you've done is now is put in all the numbers. Now remember, we are going for creating savings. I have a budget. How am I going to create savings now?
You have to spend less than you make.
Right? So we definitely got to get rid of $500 worth of expenses, right? And actually we have to get rid of a little bit more because we can't create savings until we're in the opposite situation here. So how am I going to do that on my budget? So for some, exactly, exactly, right. And so what you're going to do is it is an outflow. All right. So you have to have a savings category. Now on this list we've got it last, but you really want it first. You really want to pay yourself first. Ideally, it's happening right here. That your salary, you're having your employer deduct savings for you. And retirement accounts can be considered savings. They're just not as accessible as an emergency fund, but it is considered savings. But you want your employer to create savings for you. That's the best way. If you don't see it, you're not tempted to tap into it. But if that's not happening, then you do want to create this account, and you want to add everything up, plug in something here, and it may not be every month. So, but you've got to watch this. So I'm still $500 over my income. So now what's the next step? I'm looking at my budget. I've got my whole year planned. What do I need to do now?
Cut back on some of the extras.
Right. So what might be some of the categories that I really need to look at?
Entertainment.
Entertainment's one of the number one. Yep. So we have to look at entertainment.
Is eating out considered food or entertainment?
What do you consider it to be?
Entertainment.
Yeah.
So that is a big thing to cut.
Yes, and especially if you eat out every night, that type of thing. Pepsi, you may have to cut back on the Pepsi, the fancy coffee.
Yeah, I would let my rent go.
Yeah, right. And unfortunately, some of us do that for our vices. I heard on the news today that Starbucks is lowering their prices on coffee. The coffee crop has recovered from some drought periods. So if you're into Starbucks and Dunkin' Donut coffees, the price is supposed to be coming down.
They're just getting some really good competition from the past.
Well, that's too, yes. Right. So, but you need to analyze the categories that you can adjust. Obviously, the ones that are fixed, you cannot. But the ones that are variable, all right, maybe we need to do some more energy saving at home. As you have young children that don't shut the doors, don't turn off the lights, that type of thing. They need to have some training and a reward system if that number starts to come down. You need to look at, of course, the coffee, the expenses, budget that we're only going to go out to eat once every 2 weeks instead of every week. Carpooling, right? That would definitely help. The medical expenses, one of the reasons we want to create savings is when we have these unexpected expenses so that you're not dipping into your credit card to pay this type of thing. And because we have a leg that has to do with credit, so we have to think about that. So the idea is at least to get these two equal with the savings account. If that's not doable, at least get them equal even though you don't have the savings account. But the idea here is we want to create savings. All right, so that's the first leg of our financial security. And I have my ugly old table here. And we've got 4 people, so you get to put the first leg in. And then you can just slide it down because it won't stand just yet. All right, so do this. All right, now let's take a look at our second leg, which has to do with reducing debt and creating wealth is the related piece of that. Now, so we have our cash flow statement, we have our budget, and now we need to do one last financial snapshot of our situation. This one, anybody have idea what the third financial statement is? Even in the, we're mimicking the business world.
Build growth.
We're going to be working on that. I'm sorry?
It's the name of the
I know. Oh, okay. We're going to send you back to business remediation. There you go. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to put over here that we had our cash flow. We have our budget. And now we're going to be looking at our balance sheet. So the obvious thing is individuals as well as businesses can do this. Yours just has different categories than a business might. And for instance, you're not going to sell stock in yourself, things of that nature. Well, you might, but you got to tap that uncle. Right. You're going to ring the bell, right? Okay. So therefore, on the balance sheet, now that's coming back to you, what are our categories in the balance sheet? Oh. Okay, assets and debits, and you got half of it right. Debits, there's a better word for it in the financial world.
costs,
Liabilities, yeah, right. So we have our assets, and our liabilities. Okay, so what are assets?
things that we have.
Right, things that we own, and I'm going to use the own word because what are liabilities? Yeah, right. What's we owed, right. In other words, we have it, we just don't own it yet, right? So these are things that we owe. All right, so we got assets and liabilities. Why is it called a balance sheet?
Because at the end of the day, it should zero out. Well, you're hoping your assets are more than your liabilities.
Right. But what category, the last category do I have to have here, and this is going back to Accounting 101, to make it balance? Do assets always equal liabilities?
No. Owner's equity.
Yes. Okay. So these are the things, see, it's all coming back now. And you didn't realize that it would be of use to you in your future life. This is sort of like algebra, right? You know, where you're going, I'm never going to need this. All right, but basically, yes, you have things I own, things I owe, all right, plus my owner's equity. So these are really things that I do own totally. So what are some things that go in the asset category? Your home.
But isn't that only if it's paid off?
We're going to come to that. Okay. What else goes in the asset? Because it is considered an asset. I'm sorry?
Vehicle,
Yeah.
motorcycles, lawnmowers,
All right.
fishing poles.
Okay. Yes. If those are enough of a value that you might insure them.
Jewelry.
Yeah, jewelry, definitely. Now, the bad news is a lot of jewelry does not appreciate. The resellers can take advantage of you. You pay $1,000 for it, and you want to sell it, and they'll give you $500 because they want $1,000 for it. So, unfortunately, unless you're really wealthy and you buy the very expensive jewelry. So, what else goes in assets?
Savings.
Okay, savings.
Children.
Yeah, only if there's a price on their heads.
Put your stock in there.
Yes, you'd put your stock in here. Now that one's, remember we talked about fixed and variable? So, okay, especially the last 2 weeks. Don't even look at your balances, right?
Land that you
Yes, land.
property outside of your primary home.
Right. Okay, and basically you've got the idea of assets, all right? So what I'm going to add here is also your checking account, okay, your cash. This is your actual cash. All of this one's liquid. that you can go to and buy that coffee immediately. These are not liquid in the sense that there's an intermediate transaction. You have to sell it. And it might not be as much of an asset as you thought it was. The houses in particular, before 2008, rapid appreciation. After 2008, rapid depreciation. So unfortunately, depending on your timing. So related to that, what are the liabilities, to go back to your question? Your mortgage, right. Liability on these?
Yes.
Yeah, you might have all of these. All of these, you could have loans. The jewelry might have been a personal loan. It might have been that you're not legally supposed to do it, used your home equity to buy jewelry, because technically home equity is supposed to be used for the home. I mean, we all play that game, but that's the way the IRS looks at it. Oh, it's surprising. I know, I had to tell my husband that. I had to go to the IRS website and prove it to him. So he thought it was a free account. So, okay. Stock, again, you might have a liability if you borrowed from the broker to buy the stock, but we're basically not at that point. You might owe on the land still. You still might have a loan here. All right, but what are some other things that are in the liability category that we didn't list here?
Medical bills.
Yeah, you might have some outstanding medical bills. Yeah, the biggie. Yeah, credit cards. That's okay. Yes, you might owe child support. Hopefully, you're not in an owing situation. All right, so it wouldn't end up on this because it all goes through the cash. All right, so unless somebody owes you child support, and so it's an accounts receivable, then child support's in this category already. So we've got our assets and our liabilities. And I'm going to move all these up a little bit so I have a little bit of room down here at the bottom. I'm going to put credit cards here. All right, so again, as we did on the other reports, we do a total. So let's say our assets total $100,000. And what we owe on all of them, we owe $80,000. All right, so what is ours free and clear? That if we had to leave town today and sell everything and pay off all of our loans and bills, what would we have left? We'd have 20, which is our owner's equity. That is ours 100%. So that's the owner's equity. So that's why it's a balance sheet. So your assets equal your liabilities plus your owner's equity. Opposite. Let's say, for instance, especially the homes in the last few years have created this situation where assets total 100, but liabilities total 150. Right? So what happened to owner's equity?
Negative.
Yeah, we're negative, right. All right, so if I sold everything today for 100, can I pay off all my bills?
No.
Where am I going to get the 50 from?
From your rich uncle.
I'm going to go back to that rich uncle and say, I'm in real trouble, right? So that's one of the reasons we have to take a look at our balance sheet also. This is where we create wealth. This is the wealth over here, our net worth. And that's why we then have to look at reducing debt, because as we reduce this number, that number goes up. So how do you reduce debt?
Get rid of your liabilities.
Right. And how do I do that?
Pay them off.
Pay them off. How do I do that?
Make more money.
Make more money.
Change your budget.
Change the budget. We're back to the budget, right? We're back to the cash flow. So exactly. So that's why they all work together. You cannot reduce debt and create wealth until you look at all of these at the same time. However, there are different periods of time is what we're looking at. In other words, the cash flow's over a period of time. The budget's over a period of time. But the balance sheet is a snapshot of the moment. So it can change in the next moment. But the idea, yes, is to reduce the liabilities. The other way, which we hope will start happening, is our assets automatically increase. Homes should appreciate. That was always the saying, right? Cars, we know, depreciate. Jewelry's pretty stable. Stock should grow. Land should appreciate also. So that's another way. If we increase our assets through appreciation, then that ratio goes down. But the idea here is really to watch these numbers, especially this one, which we're going to take a look at next. That's the one that in the United States gets us in the most trouble. The medical bills are the next one there. And because your ability to get loans is really contingent on all these other numbers. And this is what the banks in the last couple of years have been very tight with their money. All right, so the ability for us to borrow has been greatly reduced. But the credit cards are still out there. All right. Okay, so leg number 2 is reduce debt and create wealth. All right, there's leg number 2. Did you get it to fit in? I know it doesn't cooperate that well. All right, so what is our first leg over here? Create savings. And so our second leg? Reduce debt and create wealth. Right. All right, so therefore our third one is, let's see what I call it. Okay. Develop good credit. Okay, so first question is, what is credit?
It's the report on how you pay your bills, whether you pay them timely. Your financial character.
Well, that's one of the C's, right? And the report does measure your financial character, but what is credit in and of itself?
It's a good thing. It's what you can borrow.
Right. It's essentially what you can get from somebody else to get something you want. You know, that's the idea behind credit. And you're right. There is a report out there. We have from 3 credit agencies, Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Different companies use different credit unions, so that's why we've had the 3. And we have the ability, once a year, you can go in and get a free credit report. You don't have to go to these companies. They charge you for your credit report. You can get a free one from Annual Credit Report.com, all one word. And they suggest you set an annual date, like your birthday, day you pay your taxes, something that's significant that you would go in and check your credit report every year. The reason you're checking your credit report, besides this developing good credit aspect, is you're also checking for identity theft. Because there will be some red flags that you may not know that you own a house in California. And this is what will tell you that. So this is one reason to go in and check it once a year. To do it more often, you will have to pay a fee. But once a year is what the recommended one is. Now, well, the credit... yes, ma'am.
Elizabeth, since you said there's 3 reporting agencies, could you go in one time and just ask for one report?
They would,
and then in 3 months go
they will
back?
charge you.
Oh, they'll charge you.
Yeah, because they're in that business.
Okay.
They charge you and they charge the companies that tap the reports,
Okay.
whereas the government supports this one.
Okay.
All right, because people were getting gouged. Okay. And they would all of a sudden, you'd have to provide a credit card number, and then you'd get this charge showing up on your credit card. Because they said it was free, but it really wasn't. Okay. And that commercial you see, that's one of the non-free ones. Okay. So this is truly a free one. So what you got is what they call a FICO score. And FICO is Fair Isaac Company. It's the company that developed this formula for the score. Generally, it runs between 300 to 850. Anybody hazard a guess as to what is a good number?
780.
I got a 780. I got a 650. And you kind of made 2 guesses there. Any other guesses?
$275.
No. They don't even open an account for you. Yeah?
500.
500. Okay. Nope. Yeah, 500. Well, in actuality, it's right here. All right. A good score is 740. All right. Anybody want to hazard what the median score, where half the people are above and half are below?
630.
Now, 630. So you're saying everybody's in bad shape. Anybody think people are in good shape? 700. You're getting close. The median is 720. Okay, that was as of last fall, late last year. Yeah, but this is a good score. Above this, you can get the best mortgage rates, best car rates. Below this, you have to do some work here. So how do they get the number? What is it measuring?
Your ability to pay off your debts on time.
Right. And how do they measure that?
How many debts you have.
Yeah. Right. They're looking at your debts, your history.
How much debt you have.
Right. Uh-huh.
How liquid are you?
Right. Yeah. It's scary how much information they have. It really is. Okay. They know basically everything about you. So, but they're looking at your debts and the history. What in the history are they looking at?
Do you pay on time?
Right. Payment history.
More than the government.
Right. Payment on time and the amount.
How many?
And right, definitely how many. For instance, on mortgages, you can double up on those payments all on your own. And you can cut down the amount of interest you owe, the total amount, by doing that. And I highly recommend you don't make that deal with the mortgage company. They will send you those they want you to do that. But you can do it on your own. And it's just when you send in the second payment on the little coupon, you just indicate all to principal. Or even on your regular payment if you have a little extra added on the principal, because the mortgage company will pay off interest first, always. So you need to get that in control. But yes, they look at the ability to pay. And because the good credit is that you have, this is the bad news, you have credit, you have loans out there, but you're paying them. You cannot get credit without having credit. It's one of those odd pieces of logic. And let's see what we're going to look at here. All right, so how do you get credit?
Sometimes if you're young, you have to have a cosigner.
Right. And on the other side, I recommend don't be the cosigner. Because the cosigner is liable for 100% of the debt. So if that young person does not pay, all of a sudden the parent gets this really nasty letter in the mail saying there has not been any payment for X amount of months and you now owe the entire balance. Or it will go to a collection agency. So I highly recommend you not do that, but we've all been there when you're 18 years old and you need to get that first car. So the parent's going to co-pay. But just be aware of that obligation, that you are not free and clear until that car is paid off. Right. So that's definitely one, is a co-pay or a cosigner.
And there's some stores like Sears or gas cards that you can begin and have a limited amount
Right.
on at least you get a card.
Exactly. So you get a card from Sears, all right, and you have a $500 limit. Do you just sit on it?
So you got to buy something.
Yes, you've got to buy something.
The whole
use
thing
your
on.
card.
Well, actually, they don't mind, on the FICO score, they don't mind if you pay it off. That's
You
okay.
have to have an amount on it.
Yeah, because that creates that history.
Okay.
All right. And the thing is, it depends on when they pick up that balance. They still may show a balance. It may not be just zero every month, and which is good, still good. So you're not paying interest on the card. You're paying it off. You're developing a good payment history. All right. So those are some ways. The parents paying for everything is not going to help you. So you have to get credit, and those are some excellent ways. Okay, so now we have credit, and we start to use it. What should be the way in which you use your card? And your mortgage will count in on this, but we're going to zero in on the credit cards more than anything else. What would be the definition of responsibility? Let's say, for instance, I have 2 credit cards. One gives me a credit limit of $1,000, and another gives me a credit limit of $2,000. All right. How much should I limit myself to on an outstanding balance at any one point in time? What's a good number?
Shouldn't you go back and look at your budget?
I'm looking at the credit companies for your good history, your good credit.
What was your question? How much balance?
Yeah. How much should I limit myself to borrowing, on my credit card?
10%.
I got how much?
10%.
10?
I would bet 50%.
50%?
I was going to say 50.
50? The agencies like to see anywhere from 10% to 30%, no more, on your credit cards.
Spender.
I know. Everybody's going, oh, my God, I'm in trouble. Yeah. In other words, they like to see your debt utilization. They like to see you using your cards, but they don't like to see this number going up to 90%, 100%, that type of thing. That's not good. And they don't like to see you robbing Peter to pay Paul. Sorry about that, Peter. All right, because they can track this. If they're a little suspicious if 100 comes out of here on August 24th at 3:01, and 100 goes here on August 24th at 3:02. They can track that stuff. And so they know you're using one credit card to pay the other. That's not good. All right, that's telling them we're back to cash flow. We got a cash flow problem. So what you want to do is watch this ratio, but you do want to have some activity on your accounts. So one of the things to building good credit is to use your cards. Keep it within this. Hopefully pay it off every month. If you don't use your card, the company will close it. These credit cards, especially starting about 2009, I was keeping the card in the folder because it didn't matter before then, and not using it. I had about 10 credit cards. I carried 2, and all the rest were in folders. And then they started closing them. So I had to drag them all out and run out to the store and buy something little. And so now I rotate through them. The reason is I want to keep a high credit balance available in case of that major emergency. But I've got to rotate through my cards, and I have a spreadsheet again as to when I've made a purchase, and I rotate through them. Obviously, I don't carry them all because that's a major exposure if they get stolen. But they have hotlines where you can register all your cards, and they will cancel them for you in a click of a computer button. But therefore, you need to have the cards and use them, but use them wisely. That helps develop your good credit.
Is it good, Elizabeth, to have that many credit cards?
It depends on this ratio. This is the good and bad news. It's okay to have that many if you're not overutilizing them. That's the difference.
So it would be like adding up your limit on every one and then multiplying it
Exactly.
by 10% to
Exactly.
see what, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And how often do you have to use them? Once every 6 months?
I've been doing about every 3 months. Yeah. I don't know the answer to that, but that's what I've been rotating through. Yeah, so far I haven't been closed since, I got one closed in 2009 when the credit crunch started. And back then they didn't have to tell you. It's just, I went to use it and it was closed. And I'm going, but I was a good customer. But see, to them, especially as the economy went bad, that's major exposure. But that people were having to live on their credit cards and not pay them. So therefore, those of us who had high balances, high credit limits, and no balance, they saw that as exposure, and they started closing those accounts. So to get one again would not be hard, but in fact, they're begging me to come back now. Things are kind of equalizing.
So we'll punish them.
I know. Yes, they're not going to get my business. Another thing you need to do is, another recommendation is on this keeping them active is do one of your regular payments using the credit card. Let's say one of your electricity bill. Set it up so that your electricity bill debits your credit card, and in your bank account you have an automatic payment of your credit card. So you've got this circle. Utility bill is paid. You're charging your credit card, and it's paid off, and that keeps it active. So that's a thing. Let's see. Don't let disputes go to collections. If there's a dispute, you definitely want to be working with the company that you have a dispute. If it's not getting resolved, you can go to the credit companies and put in a comment that says this is in dispute, so that when potential lenders are reviewing your credit report, we'll see that you return this item and the company is charging you a reshelving fee, and you're disputing that. that type of thing. Or those medical bills that we were talking about, you may have those in dispute. So you do want to make sure that there's a record that something's in dispute. Let's see. If you have a really high balance on a credit card, it is recommended that you move it to a personal loan account. So you go to the bank and get a personal loan. They treat that more favorably because you're on a regular payment schedule usually on those. I'm not talking about the line of equity. I'm talking about a personal loan.
But what if you have like a 0% on your credit card?
Again, don't abuse it. Okay. And usually, in my experience over the last couple of years, those last, 6 months or so? And then, depending on a lot of factors, they can go real high. And they don't like to see you jumping around, even though, to me, that's good financial management, is to take that next offer and move everything there, and you just sort of...
That's not a good thing?
No, they don't like to see that kind of activity because, again, it's a red flag that you're up to something. Every time you go apply for a mortgage, a car loan or whatever, when a potential lender checks your credit report, it takes off some points from your credit score. 5 points or so, and it's only a short period of time. But again, it's a red flag to them that something's happening. So they're lowering the score to get the caution flag up. So you don't go around and shop mortgages all over the place. You zero in before you say, yes, go ahead and check my credit. So that's why you pull your own credit numbers so that you can show these people, but ask them not to check it until you come back, and that you're just shopping around right now. So it's one of the...
The more your credit score is checked...
Yes, the
then
lower...
we're gonna-
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
really?
yes. Again, they think you're up to something. All right. So, and some of us may some of us may be up to something. Again, with the economy as bad as it's been the last couple of years, that is what has happened. So the idea, though, is to go through all of those steps to develop good credit. So why do we care about good credit? Why do we even want it?
For emergencies.
For emergencies, definitely, right? Why else?
Well, because mostly we cannot afford to pay cash. Most of us cannot afford to pay cash for a house. So
Yeah.
we need a mortgage, a home loan.
Yeah. So any of our large ticket items is where we need the credit. Because you're right, most of us can't afford to put cash down on a house or a car even. So that's where these types of things come in. So that's why the goal is here. My parents were of the generation that didn't believe in credit. When they went to buy their first house, they had to come up with a lot larger down payment because they had no credit history. So I'm the other way. I could buy just about anything I want because I've got lots of credit history. So that's kind of good. That's kind of bad. But anyway, it's a flip-flop in the sense of the way people thought from basically what they call the veterans era as to how to handle credit, and definitely before that even. Exactly. But they would also, the related piece is they would save so that they could buy this house, and they would pay cash for it. So a different way of thinking as opposed to this. Now, we got into trouble, of course, in 2008 because of the predatory lending practices from more 2006, 2008 was the high period of that, where people were buying houses with no money down at all. And they called them liar loans. They were lying on their income. They were lying on their payment history. Nobody was checking. And that's basically the start of the whole problem, were those bad loans. And then they major investment companies bundled them together and sold them as packages, and the buyer, the other investment company buying them, didn't know there were all these bad loans in those packages. And that was sort of the start of the collapse. So were those liar loans. All right, so that was our third leg. So what was our first leg? Saving. Second leg? Debt. All right, and what's the third leg? Okay, and now we're down to the fourth leg of this particular group. And what this one is we have now created wealth, basically. We have good credit and created wealth, and now the last leg of this is we have to protect ourselves financially. So how do we do that?
Have enough money to live for 9 months.
Okay, that's definitely one of them. Yes, definitely. And actually, they've upped the number now with the economy as bad as it is, people getting jobs and such. They're up to about a year. Yeah, I know. It used to be 6 months. Now, what else? Create a will, definitely.
Good insurance.
Insurance. That's the category we're going to zero in on today, is the insurance. Those are both good points, but we're going to really look at insurance. So what's the definition of insurance?
I'm sorry.
What's the definition of insurance?
Policy to,
It's a fuzzy blanket that you wrap yourself in when things go bad.
Yes,
You
right.
pay a little bit so that if something happens, the company then will pay a lot.
Right, it's a shared risk concept. We all pay into the same company. We all pay in $100 a month. Right. The insurance company, of course, has a lot of statistics, and they know the average hit on, so let's say over the year we all paid in, and at the end of the year, we've created an insurance company among ourselves. And at the end of the year, we have $50,000 in the kitty. And on December 31st, Cheryl's house burns down. The deal is she gets that $50,000. And we can't get angry because we might be in that boat the next year. So that's the idea, is shared risk. Now, obviously, the insurance company is taking profit out of that, to run the business. And it's not as large as we think. We think American companies are really, really predatory. Their average profit is 5% or less. So for most of them. So I know we think that they're just raking in the money, but they're not. But so therefore, especially when an insurance company often will invest that pool of money, so therefore their assets have gone down as the stock market went down. And that's obviously what happened to AIG. AIG was an insurer of insurers, and they got hold of the bag a lot. So, but we need insurance. So what kinds of insurance are going to protect us financially? Homeowners, okay. All right, car. Medical. Life. Those are the major ones, right? We have disability. We have accidental death, often. And a lot of times, like we have it through the employer. But these are the major ones.
Jennifer Lopez has insurance on her buttocks.
Yes. And a lot of them have, our celebrities have, and we Googled that in one of my classes about some of the weird things people insure. The hand models will insure their hands, the voice, right? And usually companies like Lloyd's of London will pick those up. Yeah, there's a website out there of all the strange things that people have insured. So if you were at the beginning of creating your wealth, which insurance would you go for first? And I'm going to put renters here since we're at the beginning.
Well, you have no choice about car insurance.
Yeah, right. So we got to do.
My homeowner's insurance because it's my biggest.
But this one's required by law.
Right.
Okay. This one's required by whom?
By your lending agent.
Right. Yeah.
But I think, too,
This one.
vital.
medical might be out.
Okay. Well, all right. So we've got these two for sure,
I
right?
wouldn't put two, well, I
Okay.
put medical before homeowners.
Okay. But if you have a loan, you don't get a vote. Right. Yeah. So if you're a renter, you're right. If you're a renter, so this might be 2A. Okay. If you're a renter. Yeah. That you have a choice. But here you don't have a choice if you have a home. So, and again, if you're just starting out, chances are you are in the rent category. So therefore you would look at the medical, and we're going to talk about that. Now in level 2 of the seminar is when we'll come back to life insurance, because that's usually something we have to defer. Even though the younger you are, the more cheap it is. The bad news is we've got all these other things going on, and so we just plain old can't even think about it. And it's sort of like the will. You need to have a will as soon as you have assets. And a lot of people defer that too. And that's not a good idea. You can do a very simple will, $250, if you have assets. That's the criteria, and especially if you have assets and children. That's the combination. All right, let's see. So therefore, we, of course, have under the car insurance, well, we'll come back to that one. Let's see. Let's do the homeowners is basic, right? You cover the building. You cover sometimes the outbuildings, right, that property. You can have just the basic insurance or replacement, and you really want to go for replacement because of pricing increase. And that doesn't mean you get, right now, if the replacement cost is lower because of the economy, that doesn't mean you get a check in your pocket. They will pay for the replacement itself. So it's not like you go ahead and burn your house down and get the extra money. You know, so the insurance companies aren't stupid. You know, they have that type of thing. Let's see, the car insurance. What are the minimums in North Carolina?
50,000 for injury to somebody else.
Yeah.
Is it 100? Or no, is it 100? Like 25,000, 75?
Okay, that sounds like some ideal coverage that you probably have. And the minimum in North Carolina, they write it this way, is that. So what is the 30?
Property damage? Like your car?
Okay, the 30 is bodily injury to one person. Okay, all right, so this is bodily injury for one person. So what's the 60? Two or more, right? So this is bodily injury for 2 or more, right? Okay, and so what's the 25?
Attorney fees.
Attorney fee, right? Yeah, that's the collision part, right? Okay, so at a certain time, if your car's really old, you can dump the collision, you know, because like when my car had the tree on it last April, then that one car didn't have collision on it at all anymore. So, but luckily the insurance for the other car covered getting the tree off the second car. So, actually, the house insurance paid for getting the tree off. So, and then the car insurance took over all the other payments. So we have that. North Carolina requires that you have insurance on a car, all right? And you are liable. You have to notify the DMV if you cancel it. And the computer systems are so sophisticated now. They know before you know, almost. You know, if you don't make a payment and you've ignored the notices and such, and your policy's canceled, all right, you're on the police list almost, you know, for being pulled over to check your insurance. This is a no-fault state. What does that mean?
If somebody doesn't have insurance, then it's not their fault.
Right. Well, in a way,
Virginia, you're driving.
yeah, right. You got half of it right, that's for sure, because it could still be their fault. But in this state, again, each insurance company would pay the damages of their insured. All right. In other words, the insurance company can't go. If we have a car accident, my insurance company can't go after your insurance company to pay my bills. It's a no fault. Right. Some states are not. I think there are about 11 states that are not no fault, which means my insurance company can go after your company to get reimbursed. All right. So that's what. And what that does is keeps the premiums down. Okay, because you don't have all those lawsuits going on. So that's one reason they do that. We don't think the premiums are down, but comparatively speaking, they're down. And actually, those are called tort states. I don't have that terminology there. So minimum on your car, and obviously the collision, depending on how inexpensive or expensive your car is, on how well built it is, you know, that type of thing. So the collision is what can change there too. You will have a deductible. You can lower your premium by increasing your deductible. And let's say you get the ding in the windshield. You don't even report that. You just go ahead and pay that. Because, again, insurance companies are tracking your track record. And, yes, they have the legal right to increase your premium. So ours went up. After we made a big claim, ours went up. Because August was our renewal date. And it went up. So even though we had to replace it with a cheaper car, it still went up. So we got punished for an act of God. So, you know, I'm not quite sure I like that concept there. All right, so we have auto insurance. How many of you have health insurance? Okay. How many of you know people who do not have health insurance? Okay, what are those people doing?
Hope and pray they don't get sick.
Right. Yeah, right. And our young folks tend to approach it that way, unfortunately, going, I'm healthy, I don't need it. Again, one of these seminars, we had a young man in the seminar who had a major motorcycle accident, was laid up for a long time. It wiped him out financially, and he still owes money, and the creditors are after him, you know. And so one accident like that, luckily he got well again. He wasn't permanently hurt, but one thing like that. So even if you're 20, you know, something can happen that's very bad. So therefore, Obamacare, okay, it's what they call it, but basically the Health Reform Act has put some things in place, and we never know what Congress will give and take away, but they did put some things in place 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, to help alleviate some of this situation where people do not have insurance. Because one of the reasons among many that our insurance costs go up is because of the uninsured. That the hospitals and medical providers have to recover the expenses some ways. So it's sort of, again, a share the wealth or share the expense in this particular case. So one of the things they have is a high-risk pool, and every state had to set that up. And what that meant is the uninsurable, people with pre-existing conditions, major disabilities that would be very expensive for an insurer to cover, and so they're the people who could not get insurance, could buy insurance through the pool. And these are it's being subsidized from the federal government, i.e. the taxpayers, and through 2014, I believe. And so people can get insurance, but it's still very expensive. That's the bad news. In the law that's in existence now, insurance companies cannot deny children with pre-existing conditions. So if you change employers, they cannot deny children with pre-existing conditions. And as of 2014, they can't deny anybody with a pre-existing condition. So what that means, I think we will see a major sea change with the employers at that point, in that the employers are part of this package too, and that they have to provide insurance. They get a fine if they don't. Okay, so now we have somebody, and they can't legally ask, you know, that if you have a condition. They cannot say, do you have diabetes? They cannot ask those types of questions. So, but they're going to be liable if the person they're bringing on board all of a sudden after a waiting period, they can have a waiting period, is now having major hits on the insurance. So the insurance premium to the employer is going to go up. So we're going to start seeing as these, and this is one reason Congress is still debating all of this, is all these ramifications. So, you know, if you have a pre-existing condition, you're saying, all right, I'll finally be able to get coverage. I wouldn't count on it. So that's the bad news. Currently on the law, children stay on their parents' policies until age 26. You know, it used to be 22 or in college. You know, and you know, we used to deal with folks, students who would say, I have to have a full-time load to stay on my parents' insurance, and now that has been extended to 26. So that part did kick in. The problem, of course, from the employer's point of view, are some of the high-risk factors. So the tobacco and the weight, and as you well know, here in North Carolina, the tobacco rule kicked in so that you had to stay on the higher ratio. You paid 30% of your expenses, whereas if you didn't smoke, you could go to the 20. What I was wondering, I haven't seen it yet, is how the state is testing. In other words, they took away the split.
BMI.
Oh, and I know the BMI went away. Oh, I missed.
We all had to move to the 70/30.
No, I stayed at this. No. You had we had the second enrollment.
Right, but you have to pay for that now where you didn't before.
I stayed in this 80/20. I'm not paying extra.
They're going to charge you $21 a month.
$22 a month.
I missed that part.
No,
So
they actually put everybody on that high-risk plan. And to stay on your age 20, now
Okay.
you're paying $27.
Because I remembered having the second enrollment and saying you don't need to do anything, and I had gone to the 80/20, but I missed the extra.
You don't need to do anything, but
Premium.
they're going to out of your
Okay.
check, they're going to take
Okay.
20 some odd dollars.
Interesting. That one snuck by me. Okay, good to know that I won't have to call HR to find out what this extra charge is, whatever. So, but it's worth it to me if it's only $210
Right.
as opposed to $400 for a medical test. Right, so you have to balance that. Oh, well, thank you. I learned something myself today. So anyway, I think employers are going to start looking at all of that. Well, and part of that BMI thing, again, still was the testing. You know, were we going to have a patrol out there looking at everybody? Right, so, but that was definitely part of the problem with regard to them trying to address the high-risk groups. So that will probably still come back, all right, in some fashion. So in other words, this is part of trying to modify behavior. You know, using money to modify behavior is very effective. Right. All right, so this is our last group is protect yourself financially. You get to do the honor.
Must.
Yes.
How's it go?
There you go. There you go.
There is a way to do
The
it.
round thing in the square hole.
There we go.
There you go. Excellent. Okay, so now we have built our financial table. We have our 4 legs. All right, so what's leg number 1? Okay, leg number 2?
Reduce debt.
3?
Well,
Develop good credit.
And protect yourself.
Protect yourself financially. Right, reduce debt and create wealth go together.
Right.
This one is our credit one, right, and protect ourselves. So we've got that first layer in place. And then in our second seminar, level 2, we're going to put the second layer in place. Ah, surprise! There was method to my madness. All right, any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. All right.